Welcome to this week's episode of Carlie's Couch. Today we are talking about the upper limit, and if you want to operate at your highest level, live in your highest vibration, how you need to understand what the upper limit is and find ways to break through it. God dang it.
Why you say God dang it?
I was struggling a little bit.
It seemed like you had it to me.
I appreciate that.
So first of all, for our little banter, speaking of upper limits, what does not have an upper limit is my stomach. For anybody who pays attention to Lextopia on Instagram, I have been on a 2-day food bender. I have been to about 12 or 13 food spots in the last, has it been 24 hours? Almost 24 hours. Got one more tonight. So if you hear me breathing like Biggie Smalls over here, just sweating it out. You know, I've had about 20 different meats. All of them included. Fuck it. We just gonna start there.
And I'm drinking penny water if you watching the video.
Yeah,
so.
she drinking Dasani. It's that bad. Like, yo, you just gotta clear out your pores.
Some water.
No, but I had done a 3-day juice cleanse for a few days, and after we did that, it was like, yeah, let's wild out. So I've been wilding the last couple of days. Invited Carlie today to wild out with us. We went to Foodie Land. Mm-hmm. Foodie Land, which was just basically like 500 food vendors.
It's like a fair for food.
Yep, at the Rose Bowl, all in a parking lot. Great times, good time. Had a lot of good food, so had fun. So yeah, that's why right now I'm like, a little tired. But I got my water, so gonna take a nap after this recording.
But we made it. We're really excited to be here. The food was also delicious. So you need these food festivals in LA. Definitely try to go. They're always fun. You always find small businesses. There were a lot of people there from the Bay and different places and try new things. Mm-hmm. We tried some Vietnamese birria tacos, which was interesting. Never had that before. Fire-ass lobster roll. But back to why we're here today. Sorry, I started reminiscing pretty early. Is the upper limit. I didn't know what that was. I started reading this book called The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. And one of my friends recommended that. Shout out to Amanda. And I started reading it, and I was like, what is an upper limit? And she kept talking about, actually she or he, I'm not sure, but kept talking about how, if you are a successful person and you're relatively self-aware and you're doing the work, you can overcome a lot of things, but even in your success, whether you're extremely successful in your career, like CEO, $1 million deals plus on the daily, somehow you'll reach an upper limit beyond what it is that you think that you can have, what you're worthy of, whether it's in relationships, in family, in money, in jobs, in whatever form of success you start to self-sabotage. And I thought it was really interesting. So I really wanted to explore what that looks like, how we can recognize it in our own lives, and then what does it look like to actually start to tackle that problem. Was
the whole book about specifically the upper limit problem, or was it like that was a part of what they were talking about?
So the whole book was about the upper limit problem. Gay Hendricks actually coined the term, and he or she, sorry, I should have probably looked that up, coined it because they do a lot of career coaching and life coaching for people and very successful people. And they noticed that among all these people in all these various fields and on all of these industries and everything, that they kept hitting an upper limit and that it looked different. Like some people, they would be so successful in business, but then they would mess up their home life, or they would finally get their partner, their dreams, and then start fumbling, the bag on deals that they've had forever. And so that's when they realized that there was kind of this place. And so the book's premise is to help you operate in your zone of genius. And so in your zone of genius, you can capitalize on your natural abilities, which are innate rather than learned. And this is like when people talk about flow, operating in the zone of genius is your flow, where you're inspired, you are yourself, you're distinguished, unique, and in a way that's far beyond what you're doing. And they paralleled it with a lot of successful people actually operate in the zone of excellence, which is you are doing something that you're very skilled at, you are the best. And often this zone is a cultivated skill. It's something that you've practiced and established over time, and how most people don't break through to their zone of genius and really figuring out who they are and getting in their flow because of the upper limit problem.
So excellence is awesome, but they're saying there's another level.
Yeah.
And were they saying that but that we could be operating at that higher level at all times? That could be a regular state, or it's just hey, you can get to that sometimes.
Well, I mean, with humans, I think ebb and flow, but they're saying you could operate your life in the zone of genius if you are able to break through these things. Not to say you won't have days where you mess up, but like, yeah, you could live your life on a higher level.
But in reading that book, did you feel like you were personally, like you were inspired to be like, oh man, I can tap into a next level? Or like, how did you feel reading about it?
I thought that it was an interesting concept because, like, you know, we do a lot of, if you've listened to a couple of the podcast episodes, you know, we do so much self-work, right? You know, on like unlearning traumas and learning how to be present and being self-aware and loving yourself. And I've never thought about what that looks like career-wise. Like, I've never thought about how those things manifest in my life, and that could be keeping me from being in that next level. Like, oh, damn, there could be a next level here. Like, because I do operate in flow, but I'm not always there.
Yeah, I guess I just wonder how you felt about it, because it also kind of sounds overwhelming, or sounds like it's just, oh, here's a lot more work, or like here's some space of zen that you could be in. And almost as if it's like, are we supposed to get to a space where we just don't feel like we have any doubts, any problems, any insecurities, and like, you know, just like always leveling up? But it's like, you know, at what point, I guess, is like, you're straight. You know what I mean? Like, when is it like, oh, I'm good?
I think we are already good as we are, right? And I think that is the real gag, right? In all of these learnings, I was reading something this morning that was talking about the Tao, the way of life, the Tao Te Ching. I probably messed that up too. And they were talking about how, you know, that's balance. Like, life is like a pendulum, and we tend to sway on opposite sides and then try to make up for it by swaying the other way, instead of just kind of chilling in the middle and realizing that you already have things. So I think a healthy perspective, instead of like always trying to, man, I have to fix this or do this to get better, it's noticing that, you know, you could be living, you know, your best life, not just what you're good at or skilled at, but you could actually be creating the things that are on your heart, or doing the work that you love. And
Can I
go ahead.
Slightly want to interrupt.
Go ahead.
I think it almost is more clear saying it from the other way around. Like, if you didn't have the upper limit problem, you wouldn't stop yourself at a certain space. So you're like, oh, you can do the things that you love, and it's like, that's cool. But I think really it's like, and for me to understand, it's like, yes, if you tell people like, hey, have there been times where, you know, you got to a crazy level and all of a sudden it was just like, oh, I don't feel like I can go farther than this, or you have maybe an opportunity, but you're like, nah, that's not really for me, type thing, and so you don't really go as far as you could. And so, like, what are some ways that can look like? Like, how can we illustrate that in, like, different parts of life, I guess?
Well, so I think the premise, like, of a lot of storylines and movies and TV shows is people are very successful but extremely unsatisfied. You know what I mean? And I think that's a good.
Yeah, that's always a plot too. Or it's like, hey, I'm this awesome warrior, but to fight this last person, I have to like super like train or do like more, or, you know, like, it's like I have to level up to be able to actually conquer and save the world, type thing. So maybe it's like when we have this upper limit problem, we'd be like, yeah, I'm good, I'm gonna pack it up. Like, I'm not about to do all that. And so maybe it's like not accepting that challenge or something. But
yeah, and just living in your life in a way that is satisfying to you, like knowing that you can do these things. But I think that plot is like a perfect example of like what the upper limit like could look like if you're trying to still grasp what the concept is.
But is upper limit problem not thinking that you can do it?
No, I don't think so. I think it's just having a dissatisfaction and not really knowing where it comes from. Like thinking like, man, I finally got all these things I thought I always wanted, and I'm still not satisfied.
Oh, I thought it was like when you stop yourself from.
Well, I think it's both. So like that dissatisfaction, like all those people who like, you know, turn like a midlife crisis, right? Like, oh, I got to go buy this car, quit this job, or do all these things, and it's like, well, you could actually level up instead of wilding out and trying to figure out what that is.
Okay, so that could be an example. In love, I would think like love and relationships, an upper limit problem. Could that be where maybe you just haven't had like that relationship that was super awesome, but then I feel like we see stories of this all the time, or kind of hear about it, where it's like, oh, this person who's like really awesome to you and they love you and they're treating you well, but for some reason you're still kind of like nah, this is a little too good, or he's doing a little too much, or I don't think this is right, because you're so used to like a certain thing, so you kind of don't really accept it.
There's an example that they use in the book about this woman who is killing it, like with her job. Like she's phenomenal, but her joke is always like, have everything but the husband that I want, And so once she started getting coaching from this person, she finally met this guy. He's a computer programmer. He was amazing. They fell in love and all those things. But then like 6 months later, she called the coach and was like, I'm about to divorce him. He's all these things. The coach was like, yo, calm down. What happened? And she was like, he gave me this really bad investment advice. And then the coach was like, why are you taking investment advice from your husband when you're the business person? And she was like, oh.
Like you're looking for something.
Yes, you're like looking for something that is a problem. You start looking for them. And so I think that happens to all of us, right? You really are like, man, it can't be this good, or I can't feel this good, or I can't have everything in my life working out right now. So you start looking for things and then blow them up. Because he said, or he or she said that they were coaching that person and they were like, bro, why'd you take advice from him? And then the husband was just trying to level up, and because he felt insecure because the wife was so successful and he wasn't a business person. So both of them are trying to, just we're human. We're human.
And then for sure, we've kind of been touching on it, but like in a career for sure, like I'm trying to think of some opportunities or things where it's like somebody's asking like, oh, can you do this? Or would you think about working in a particular space or with a particular person or type of client or something? And then to be like, I'm not really quite there yet. Or, just like not accepting that like you can take it on, even if you might need to figure some things out, but like you can take it on, you can actually do it, allowing yourself to step into the next level. Is there any better like a career or work style type?
Just the one from the book. So they were coaching this man and he was about to sell his company like for a lot of money. Like he was about to cash out, baby. Like he had bread, but like he was about to sell it for 10 times what he thought it was, all these things. And he said he spent so much time like combing through the contract with a fine-tooth comb, and he kept going back with revisions, and he had issues with this and with this and with this, that they finally like walked away. And then afterwards he realized like, oh, I just never thought I could do that. So I sabotaged myself.
Is it the same as self-sabotage then? It sounds like it, like, or maybe we self-sabotage as a result of having an upper limit problem.
There we go. I was about to say, I think the upper limit problem is more of a mindset.
Because a lot of the symptoms of it seems, is like you think, and it's so interesting, I think, how our minds can work, where it's like we're really trying to make real what we believe and what we think. And so it's really a signifier of like, I don't really think I'm that CEO, or like, I don't really think I'm, that person worthy of this much love, or I don't really think this. And so your brain like comes up with a reason why it's like, yeah, like he's probably doing this or that. So yeah, you're not worried. Like something is off, or, yeah, let's do some things that make it where you don't get this opportunity. But do you think it's always that? Like, do you think self-sabotage is always upper limit problem?
I don't think so. I think we self-sabotage ourselves for a plethora of reasons. I think the upper limit problem is specifically like the limitations we believe that we can have this much abundance. Like, if would it make you feel a type of way if someone, well, maybe not you, but some people might feel a type of way if like someone was like, man, yeah, I got $1 million contract. Like you might be, hell yeah. Some people are like, wait, me? My company's not ready. I'm not all this. So I think.
You saying somebody tried to offer you that?
Yeah, and you all of a sudden start in on yourself like, oh,
nah, yeah, I would get stressed off top though, because it's still like the first things that makes you think is like, what can we be doing to make it worth that? Instead of thinking about it the other way. And actually, so with one of the last clients I just pulled, it was one of my bigger monthly retainers, and I was talking to one of my operations guys about it. Like, should I like add? I forgot what I was trying to do, but like kind of like, what can we do to make this really be worth it? He was like, yo, like relax, because remember how much when they showed me the proposal that other people were doing, that was like they were charging like $10K a month for some trash. He's like, yo, remember their proposal and like what they were doing, like. You're already worth it just by giving them better, like a step better than what they had already. So it's like, you don't have to overthink, like trying to pad it and make all these extra things. And it's like, oh yeah, you're right. Like, so understanding value, I think, is kind of maybe one of those underlying things, like our own value and what we're doing, or ourselves or whatever, where it's like, we're trying to like measure it and you might not think it measures up. So it's like, you don't just open yourself up to do more.
So it's like a reflection of what we believe we either bring or are worth or have or can receive, like in love and a bunch of different things. So I think that those are all part of a mindset but then to your point, that we start self-sabotaging, we start reacting to those behaviors and bringing that behavior into our life, and then it just becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So that's why it's important to start with the mindset. But if you're like, I don't know if I have an upper limit problem, here are some symptoms of what that could look like.
So kind of that goes into that coming up next. I was going to ask, do you think everybody has an upper limit problem?
I would think most people do.
And so it's just interesting. And I guess that author, you said they coined this term, which makes it kind of easy to talk about it. But it's almost like if you're just saying in layman terms, like, have you ever had an opportunity you self-sabotaged, or you know something was too good and you self-sabotaged? I feel like that's a general experience for most people.
It is, but it's like why, and those could be different reasons. It's like, but why are you doing that?
Doesn't it always kind of come back to like your own, like your value, insecurities, and all those things? In like why you self-sabotage or why you might have that issue. Even for people like, because like I kind of grew up too, where it's like you can do anything, but at the same time, I don't even know what it is, like the real life things that tell you like, nah, you know, like, or make you think like, all right. But I feel like everybody deals with this.
I would think so too. But I think I don't think that everything that self-sabotage is upper limit problem.
Yeah, I guess. And also, I don't think that. What it's making me think though is like, you know, if this is something that everybody deals with, is it? I don't know, saying it's wrong or bad, but like, is it wrong or is it just a part of our human experience? You know, or maybe it still makes it worth it for it to be something for us to combat, or maybe that's not the right words either for that, but maybe it's still something worth like, hey, we can get past this. But I just think it's interesting because like, I don't know, we're all kind of there.
Yeah, I think the upper limit, I think the upper limit problem though is more applicable whenever you are like doing the work and trying to level up. So I see. You see what I'm saying?
I'm saying I want to level up, but I'm still hurting myself.
Yeah, doing that. But also for people who are like, I want to do better, but aren't actually doing any self work and aren't figuring. You can't figure out like, man, why do I keep self sabotaging myself? Like I think. I think this can affect everybody, but I think there's a certain sect of people like who are really trying to elevate.
It's helpful to label this and really think about it. Yeah. Or like even you're right, like your example with the lady where she's like, I got everything except this, and it's like, okay, let's talk about like, so it's something you say you want. Let's talk about why are you holding that back? Yeah. Okay, that's more clear. So for people who are like, man, you know, there's this next level or this thing that I'm trying to get to, but either you kind of have had the opportunity, you haven't quite grasped for it, or you haven't really opened yourself up for real to like really do that thing, then this, I guess, would be for you to really think about these concepts. Okay.
So if you notice some symptoms of a person with an upper limit problem are, one is if you're always worrying about everything.
Why? If you didn't worry... Maybe I get it, because if you didn't worry, it's like, like everything, maybe not everything's gonna be fine, but everything's going the way it should and it's flowing and the opportunities are here and the space is here and the things are here. So you're not worried about like holding on to anything or grasping on to anything. Another symptom of a person with an upper limit problem would be blaming or criticizing others. And I think maybe because that could be a reflection of really like how you feel about yourself and your own kind of criticisms. When I'm criticizing other people a lot, it's really like usually like kind of just a reflection on myself. And so if you're criticizing yourself so much or kind of being hard on yourself, it's like you're not letting yourself be a human and like be open to things happening. Okay. I'm like really trying to think about this as we go, because I want to make sure like we're not just saying stuff. It's like, how does this actually make sense?
No, that makes sense. They have an example of a boss who, like, let's say that you worked for me and you did really great on a project, but I would be like, man, there was that one time you fucked up. And that's what I would bring up instead of celebrating you. And that was one of their clients. And they were like, why do you do that? And he's like, man, I'm just so scared that, that they'll do that again and that we'll not be able to get to this next level. But what was really happening is he wasn't able to build relationships with his team. That was holding his company back. Like he was really breaking people down. And so he started having meetings where he would just praise people and like his sales went through the roof and all these things happened.
Okay. Yeah, that's a good example.
Another one is that you feel guilty. I think that one is kind of self-explanatory. We can talk about it. She said, and explain. If you feel guilty about like where you are or about things for what you have, I think that.
I can see that, because if you feel guilt around anything, it keeps you from kind of moving forward.
And like being fully present, because I'm so like not feeling like I deserve this or have this or wow, I'm kind of lucky for this. Like it's like, no, that's not a great mindset to have.
I think the next one's pretty obvious. Fear and self-doubt. If you have an upper limit problem, you're doubting yourself, your abilities, maybe scared of what that next level looks like. And I can identify with that because it's like, oh, okay, like get a big client. And now it's like, oh man, can we perform? Or like, oh, like is the team going to be together? The process is going to be together. But it's like you have to do some things as you're growing. And just if you have more of the right mindset around what that looks like and take all that like extra worry off of it, it's almost like you're just like that extra fear and doubt is just adding more weight to your shoulders instead of just like, all right, we're here. So like, what's next? Or like, how are we going to move through it?
And that one kind of flows into this one. So hiding significant feelings and or not speaking significant truths to relevant people. And I think that a great example of that is in relationships. Like you're not saying how you're feeling or what's really going on.
Every day.
Because you're scared of them leaving or of them changing or of them seeing you for real, which stunts like a relationship's ability to grow.
I wonder, well, I don't do it because of that. So if I all the time get talked about, it's like, oh, like as soon as ask me like, oh, how are you feeling or what's wrong? And something will be wrong, but it's like, man, I think I just won't want to say stuff because, oh, maybe it does end up getting back around to that. Like I don't want to talk or I don't want to say a thing, usually because like, oh, I don't want to have a conflict right now, or I just want things to be chill or easy. But also when you do that, you're keeping yourself at the same level. But then every time I have like a good argument, like a constructive, whether it's an argument or I'll just say conflict because it doesn't even have to be an argument. But if you actually express like, oh man, I feel some kind of way about this, but I recognize it's kind of off or whatever, but you know, that's just what that triggered. Or like if you just start talking and get it out, at least you can move through something to maybe have more understanding with the person or be able to just kind of like at least have let it out. So because sometimes you just being in a bad mood or you not talking to the other person, now they getting a vibe, then it's like back and forth kind of thing where it's like you're kind of resentful or everybody's all quiet and you're like, all right, like, it just doesn't help move anything forward. And I guess with all of this, we're saying like we're stopping yourself from moving forward into better, opener, more abundant spaces. Not keeping agreements is a symptom of the upper limit problem. Maybe because that's like a form of self-sabotage.
Yeah, man, that's what I was thinking.
And when I think about that, that's like, for me, I'm thinking the first thing is like deadlines. Sometimes you like, God, dog. And then especially, it'll be like 3 p.m., 4 p.m., not even like midnight or nothing. It's like, man, I said I was going to send this, but at this point, I might as well just send it tomorrow. Or like, you kind of like talk yourself out of stuff sometimes. And it's like, dog, just do what you say. I don't, that's so hard sometimes for me. And not for like the obvious things of like, doing what you say as far as, like just treating people good and certain types of things. But like sometimes in just the overall, it's like, even if I tell myself like, oh, first I'm gonna make sure I work on this today. And then you end up kind of going all around to do everything else. And it's like, why? I wonder like just why? And maybe that's a form of sabotage maybe, and a form of procrastination, a form of not letting yourself really live in that space that you could be.
I think so too, and especially like keeping agreements with yourself. Like we always think about agreements with others, but I would say look at yourself and look how many of those you break on the daily. That's just me talking to me.
I wonder if there's a way to like, or if it makes sense to, like at the top of the day, it's like, all right, here's maybe 3 agreements I want to keep today, and whether it's around things to do, like, oh, I'm gonna make sure I get the dishes done on time, or I'm going to be on time for all my meetings, or I'm going to respond to every email, whatever it might be. There's things, but maybe there's other stuff too about, but I think other things are harder. So those are the things like, like I just have to do them. But if you say like, I'm going to keep an agreement, like, oh, I'm not going to judge anybody today. And it's like, all right. Or maybe it's like, I'll work on catching it. Best. But but even still, that's kind of like, all right, like 5 minutes in, like, I forgot about that one. But still, maybe, I don't know, that's something to think about. Is like, all right, looking at my plate today, what all do I have to do? And maybe it's just more simple as like in my planner, it says top 3 things today. And maybe it's like, all right, let me have an agreement to make sure I touch those 3 things or something like that. I
think that's a great place to start. Another one is you get sick. Getting sick, whether like when everything else is going well, is a classic sign of an upper limit problem. Whether it's something like a cold, like out of nowhere, like you ain't been nowhere, you ain't been doing nothing, all of a sudden you get a cold. It's your subconscious way of kind of keeping yourself in your comfort zone and keeping you down. So next time you're sick, take time to rest and think about like what.
Have you ever noticed that happen before with you?
Mm-hmm.
And also I wonder if comparable to that is, you know, every once in a while, like, you just be drained. Like, you're like, yo, I'm tired. And maybe you didn't really do anything totally different to be like that. But it's almost like, and I think that's something I try to watch myself, too, sometimes. Not all the time. Because I feel like every day, you know, people ask you, like, how you doing? How's work? Whatever. And the first thing you kind of be like, I'm tired or busy and those kind of things. And, you know, I try to challenge myself, like, yo, stop saying you're tired or stop, like, living in that tired space. But sometimes you do be tired. But I feel like there's those times where it's like, damn, all of a sudden I'm just like feel really drained, or like I do feel a little off, and it's almost like you're putting yourself in that space to almost like feel better about, oh, I'm not, you know, it's okay, I didn't go all in today, but, you know, I'm just really tired, so I'm going to listen to my body. And I don't know, I think that's a weird place, because yes, you do need to listen to your body, but also at what point can you like kind of challenge yourself to push through that, or, you know, go for a walk real quick and be like, all right, I'm going to come back to it, or I don't know, something. But I think that is definitely like a sometimes it's like a self thing. Like your brain just tells you like, well, you know, you're about to turn up, so let me turn you back down a little bit.
Exactly. So your brain tries to level you out.
Oh, sorry. And then the last thing is, and this is the most obvious one, I guess, is you throw away success. It's a common behavior of people with an upper limit problem to have success within their grasp and then throw it all away. So whether you lose, well, I guess that's me this weekend. Whether you lose weight only to binge eat and gain it all back, or you drink too much at a work function and you embarrass yourself, it's almost like you're trying to soothe yourself sometimes. Like you're trying to soothe yourself by being like, yeah, I'll work on this deck. I know it's due tomorrow, but I got time. I can work on it just tomorrow, and I'm going to chill right now and soothe myself now instead of doing that thing. Or, yeah, like I just did this diet, but you know, I really want to get those 3 burgers right now, so I'm gonna go do that because that's what I want right now. Or like at a work party, it's like, oh, this is a little awkward. Like I could not work, but let me just go get a drink, and that'll make me feel better. It almost feels like you're not putting the long term ahead of the short term, which is, I think, a common characteristic of successful people is like to be able to have much better long term thinking, and which kind of what this sounds like, and that is hard. I think that is really hard.
It is, especially because we are the microwave generation, like instant gratification, baby, likes, whatever we need, we got it, like in the moment. And so it's really hard sometimes to keep that in mind. But if you have some of those symptoms, you might have an upper limit problem. In the book, whenever they were talking about how they dealt with their clients, it comes down to 4 questions, and you can have more than one, and most people typically do, but at least one of these are present whenever you have an upper limit problem. And so the first one is, and these are the cause like of the mindset for the upper limit problem. So these are like the root cause
in general, or like if in an instance you do this thing.
No, this is a mindset. So it's like the root. So the fruit is self-sabotage, but this is a root of that tree. So the first one is feeling fundamentally flawed. This one is mine. You have a deep-seated feeling that there's something wrong with you, or that you're flawed. Like no matter what happens, it's like, you know, I can't do this, or I can't, you know, become this full creative genius because inherently there's something wrong with me. Like I can't really live this life of my dreams and have this person because, you know, they're going to, like, something's inherently wrong.
The second one is disloyalty and abandonment. Excuse me. So disappointing your family, not feeling like you met their socialized expectations, or feeling guilty perhaps for being successful or making it out, survivor's guilt, things of that nature. And that sounds kind of like what we mentioned before, is like breaking those narratives. Like you're used to a narrative of how you've grown up and your family. And it's like, oh man, can I break that, or should I break that? So yeah, I can see how that would definitely hold people in that space.
The third one is believing that more success brings a bigger burden, more money, more problems. Feeling like you're a burden to people also. Like most of the time that stems from caregivers and parents and how you were either treated or raised in your family. So as most things stem back to childhood, like thinking about how that could have been a mindset. Like if your family got a whole bunch of money and your parents got a divorce, maybe you think inherently that means that more money equals, you know, unhappiness, or Well,
I wonder if religion can play a part in that too for folks who
bet.
they kind of align, even though you might not think it or it might not be in the front of their mind, but you kind of align. Like every movie, it's like the rich person's always a bad guy, but you kind of align like having wealth, being the big CEO as like a bad thing, which at a certain point it is kind of like, all right, bro, you could spread that out a little bit. But for what we're talking about, because we don't be on nobody's level the same as no Jeff Bezos or anything. And this reminds me of like those Twitter combos. People like, yo, why y'all always caping for these billionaires?
Oh my God.
Like you on the level. Like you're not realize like you're not nowhere near that. Like nowhere near that. So like it just, they don't need your arguments.
Need you to cape for them.
But yeah, more success, bringing more problems. It is kind of like a trope. It's like, you know, ongoing thing that you kind of see in different spaces. Or that being successful makes you unhappy. Like, literally every movie, it's always that person who's like got it all together, but then it's like they have this big issue about, you know, they don't have this in their life. And it's always like that.
They have an upper limit problem. And then the last one is the crime of outshining others. And this is common among really gifted or talented children, people who are very charismatic or star students who are often accused of stealing attention or always trying to steal the spotlight. And their normal behavior is seen as threatening. So, for example, like if you got in trouble a lot because, you know, you always outshined your sister, or because you got in trouble for just being kind of who you are, like that could also be a cause.
And so that makes you hold yourself back?
Apparently. I mean, because then if you think about, if you associate, you know, like, let's say like disapproval from your parents every time you got an A and your sister got a D, then you might not like, you might try to like limit
your
back
a little bit.
Yeah, you might try to limit. Or if people always tease you like, you always got to get an A and outshine everybody.
Yeah,
and
so
you start
I can see that. I can see that for sure on certain levels, like in the classroom where it's like, damn, I know every answer, but, you know, you don't want to raise your hand every time. Like, all right, I'm going to just act like, I don't really know all the time, because it feels like you're singling yourself out. That makes sense for sure. I wonder, yeah, I can see that then. That's interesting. So those are the 4 hidden barriers. So think about if you have any of those 4, or any of those that maybe rings a little bit closer to you.
And those are the 4 hidden barriers that lead to the underlying beliefs that cause the upper limit problem, which then leads to like the self-sabotage. So if you found yourself identifying with any of those symptoms or any of those questions, here are some ways to kind of combat this.
The same way we combat everything. Awareness, identify it. So if you're thinking about this now, maybe you Google it, look into it a little bit more. It's like, oh man, I do have an upper limit problem. Or if you could think like recently in relationships, or especially in work, like, oh man, I did let that kind of slip. Like, man, like I recognize it all the time, but like my business, as somebody who runs a business, like that's often that I have an opportunity or something and I'm just like, I'm good on that, or, you know, whatever. But also you can't do everything. So, you know, be real with yourself about it. But I think if you can identify it, and accept it and have awareness around it, that's always the first step. I would go as far as what we said earlier too, to also say, just start somewhere where you just make a few agreements with yourself, and just start being true to like yourself, what you really want. And then kind of seeing where those things aren't lining up also, so you can kind of just be more aware of like, am I holding myself back here? Versus, or maybe it's really hard, or maybe there's really a skill I need to learn more of. Because sometimes it's literally just that, like, oh, I'm just holding myself back.
Most of the time, that is the thing. So refreshing those narratives. And then here are some things you can do like daily to kind of build momentum. So the first is awareness. So taking a step back and noticing what comes up, like where you see those behaviors. So constantly worrying or constantly criticizing or blaming other people for things.
And then as you're practicing that awareness, write them down. Like when you have those observations of like, oh, that's a pattern, or that is something I do, or I don't accept compliments, or whatever it may be. There's so many things, and sometimes that makes it difficult because it's such a part of, you know, your day to day, or like your speech or your thought patterns. But as you start to recognize them, maybe write them down, or maybe write yourself a little prompt in the morning or evening, so that you kind of just think about what those things may be. If you catch it, just jot it down. You can pay attention to it that way also.
And then working to stop your negative self-talk. So anytime you notice you breaking yourself down, this goes for life in general, but particularly for this, just stopping that negative self-talk in the moment.
And then focusing on your strengths. So, and also I would say like acknowledging your strengths, and really understanding like what you are good at and really leaning into that. Don't not kind of talking yourself down off of like what those strengths are. And also your self-esteem, like really think about what your self-limiting beliefs may be. Think about where you are with your self-esteem, maybe even identifying just in what areas is it kind of a little lower than others. And then working on that. Like I don't know exactly how to say how to work on your self-esteem. And in talking about this, we said we'd do another episode where we're going to really look into that because, that's really kind of a core thing with a lot of this stuff. But maybe like working on your self-esteem can just also be, again, when you recognize that you're about to say something different or react a certain way, it's like, nope, like, yeah, I am awesome. Or like, yeah, like I can do this. Or yes, I will finish this by whatever date or, whatever. Like sometimes it's just accepting the words, the actions, the opportunities that are being put in front of you because you do recognize like, yes, I can get that done or I am worthy of that thing. So maybe it could just start with that switch of catching those thoughts.
That is definitely the place to start. And whenever you notice yourself getting caught up in that or like falling into a negative loop, you can affirm yourself. And we've talked about affirmations before and went through some, but finding some that feel true to you so you can believe them when you say them and work up to it. So using affirmations.
Mm-hmm. Also releasing guilt, working on letting go of things that you may feel guilty about, because those definitely like keep you in a space. And letting go of that can look like writing a letter to yourself, to a person, kind of just acknowledging those feelings around it. And whatever that thing is that you may be feeling guilt around, it may be something that you can kind of challenge yourself to kind of get back in that space or like confront it in a certain way to where you do not let that kind of overtake you. Like you are like, you know what, like, yes, that happened or maybe it didn't really. So I know this is kind of broad because it depends on what the guilt is around. Mm-hmm. But really be like, hey, that happened or that was the past or man, that's something that may feel some kind of way, but I'm going to let that go and maybe try to move forward in that space in a different way.
Being open to receiving. We have a whole episode on this, so you should run that back. Mm-hmm. But being open to receiving compliments, gifts, love, time, whatever, people are trying to give to you, being open to that.
Mm-hmm. And being grateful and expressing gratitude around everything. That always just keeps you in a mindset of being open for what is around you now, what you have, and always like bringing more to you.
Not taking yourself or life or this self-work too serious because then you'll miss it.
Yeah, you sure will. And then overcoming an upper limit problem is not a one-time thing. So maybe kind of just being aware, maybe the next time something's kind of happened, like, oh, maybe this is what they were talking about on Carlie's couch. Where like, I know I could kind of do this, but I just don't want to for some reason. And I think that's a key thing too. It's like when you're like, I don't know why I like don't care about finishing this right now, or like I could do it, but I'm just not. Like that seems like it's a thing. It's not like I cannot do this. It's never really a legit can't do. But it's like you're trying to like, I don't know, I shouldn't, and it's like not even like you're trying to come up with a reason not to do stuff. And that's how it feels, I think, like what I can identify with some of these stories. And so like kind of catch yourself with that and recognize like, it's not just a one-time thing, but if you can catch just pieces of it, maybe that can also spread that awareness across the board as well.
And as you start to notice those and put these into action to start changing your patterns, like you start to get more into alignment, and alignment with everything is key. Like that's how you make sure you're on the path. And so let us know, what parts of this spoke to you, or maybe some things you're going to try this week. Maybe even some agreements you're going to make to yourself like this week. Hit us up on Carlie's Couch on Instagram and Twitter and on TikTok.
Yep. And if you have an upper limit problem, just know I do too. Carlie does too. Most people probably do too. We all do too. But for sure that has to be, it's probably just like a huge weight off your shoulders. In a way, it's like you could just level up like, oh, like when you really start realizing like I'm the only one holding myself back from stuff, like that's so disturbing to me even right now. It's like, dog, because like I know I'm the only person holding my shit back, but I'm still hold it. I'm like, hold door, I'm gonna hold this shit back still. But it's like, for what? I don't. Yeah, why am I tripping?
Like that meme with the boot on the person's head and their hand is the one inside of the thing.
Right.
That's like, us to us every day.
Or who puts the stick in the bike and then try to blame everything else. And it's like, okay, like we're just tripping, but why? I don't know. But recognize it. We're going to get through all this together. Take some time. I'll probably need to Google this some more. Carlie was reading this book about upper limit problem. But I'd never seen that term before either, before we had talked about it. So look into it. Maybe we can find some other ways to help us kind of move through and open up to the next level.
And this week's shout out, I'm super excited about because it's me. I have been working on like figuring out self-care products, and because self-care is one of the goals of my life, and a lot of things that I teach in corporate and nonprofits to students to people all over. And the first of my line is called Hoe Butters, HEAUX butter, and it dropped. So hopebutter.com. I'll put the links in here, but if you're trying to get some nice moisturizer made with love, all natural,
you still have
organic ingredients, I'm restocking. So I sold out. So shout out to that. Shout out to people like Lexi who bought some. Thank you.
I know I shared it first and I was like, oh, I should have copped a couple first because I know how her friends are supportive. I was like, oh, let me make sure I get one.
I definitely sold out more. I had like 3 people text me, so I was trying to get this, but it's out of stock. Like, I love it. You got to be quicker than that. My mama gonna hit me like, what's the discount code? And I was like, girl,
not what's the discount.
I was like, let me make one for you real quick. It's mama. But it only worked once, so sorry, y'all.
What's the discount
She really
code?
hit me with
right, promo code, please.
Hello.
But this isn't as bad. But definitely, like, I have some friends who have their own, like, small business and make products, too. And I always, in the promo code, I always put free shipping. And it always goes through. And I'm like, yes. So there's a couple dollars where I'm like, yeah, y'all made these generic codes. It's like, all right, I'm gonna see if this one works. And it usually does. Did you have free shipping?
No.
Oh,
I did if you bought off.
Probably say you got to just straight up support. So that's on you.
Sorry, y'all. I love y'all, but not sorry. I spent a long time. It's been almost a year, like trying to figure out the perfect. I feel like a little scientist in there trying to figure out the perfect things for the nice moisture, the good texture.
All right, now we're gonna be leaving some reviews, so we'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see.
I welcome feedback. I'm just getting better. So, Hoe Butters, check us out on hopebutter.com. I haven't made a whole social media yet, so nah, not yet.
Yeah, but everything looks really good on the site. It looks good. You got to keep all that simple. Like, and like, please think about that. Like, as you're doing your own endeavors, like, I'll just keep it simple, get it out there. As I'm working on something from like 3-4 years as well. So it'd be like that. But it's so funny. This is maybe kind of with the upper limit problem as well. It's like, as soon as you actually do something and you're just like, man, just take it, y'all. Like, and you're like, oh, that sold out. Like, I could have did this at any point.
Man, like, could have did this a long time ago.
Right. So, yeah, and that's where you realize, like, oh, why do I have an upper limit problem? Why am I holding myself back from just moving forward to the next step?
So this episode is very timely for me. Make sure y'all check that out. And then our question of the week this week is, let's see. Where in my life have I not kept my promises?
Don't get me started.
We ain't got no time for that.
Where in my life have I not kept my promises? I've learned that this might be kind of vague, just because I've done it in quite a few ways recently. So in relationships, it's been challenging that it's like you think like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be open about everything and talk about stuff, and then you start to realize like, I realize that I think like, hey, I'd rather actually put my comfort first. So if I'm like, oh, this is not hurtful. So I'm not like out here acting crazy, but I'm like, if it's not hurtful, then I just don't need to talk about something or bring a thing up, or, it's like, I'm not keeping my promise. I'm being really transparent sometimes, and, or even answering things all the way. Because it's like, let me just say something quick and just skedaddle out of here. But to what we were saying earlier, it's like, well, that doesn't help also like build good, or not good, but like a great relationship if you're not like that. So my promises is sometimes like, I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna do all these things, but then all of a sudden I'm like, I feel awkward, or I don't want to talk about this, and nah, nothing to talk about. And then I'd rather just not.
Okay. I would say the hardest place for me, not lately, but up until this point in my life, was with myself. I would want things, but I would usually choose, other people's feelings or sacrifice myself and my wants and needs for other people. I don't do that any longer, but I would say like that's the first thing that came to my mind, is with myself.
Mm-hmm. But that's a good question and a good way to recognize like where your limiting thoughts are. So for me, what I'm saying is kind of like a struggle with promises that I keep is limiting my ability to reach a higher level of intimacy and or openness and those types of things. And so it's like, all right, well, why are you holding back on that? Or why are you even making those promises? So for me, I also have to recognize, like, how can I be more honest also with myself about, like, what am I about to do? Because, yeah, sometimes I'm not going to, I'm just not going to go there. I'm just going to be like, yeah, it's cool. And just keep things to myself.
And mine kind of stems from like the feeling flawed or not feeling worthy of like these things. And now that I know that I am and I'm walking in that more, that's how I'm starting to keep my promises to myself, like as I approach it.
That's good. So listeners, where in your life have you not kept your promises? Think about that. Think about where you are now. We got to dip out of here.
Man, this food coma is real.
I'm about to say, bro, I need to take a nap. Straight up.
We struggling,
because I got dinner reservations in about 3 more hours too. So I need to let this process. I might need to push that back. But thank you guys for listening as always. We hope you learned something today.
152, baby. See y'all next week.